All right, you guys, so in this video, we're gonna go over exactly what you need to do in order to start like 2 to 3x in your commissions. And I think this one thing, it's so important. And the minute I started implementing it, it really changed my life. All the people I've helped, it changed their sales career as well. It really streamlines and just makes your objection handling process so much easier. All right, so with that being said, my name is Billy Gapp. For those of you guys who don't know, I've sold multiple seven figures in the high ticket sales space and just overall in general through entrepreneurship, etc. I've helped hundreds of people already do the same and implement these systems and these processes into their sales process. Okay, so with that being said, you guys, the one thing that you guys need to start doing is pre-handling objections. All right, there's a few reasons why you need to start pre-handling objections. Okay, one is you need to get people aligned with the idea that you are going to reframe the way that they think. It's kind of like habitual, that you need to get them used to the idea that you are going to reframe them. All right, so you need to get them aligned with and comfortable with the idea that your way of thinking, all right, is what the way that they need to be thinking. And it's much easier at the end of the call after you drop price, because when you drop price, inherently what's going to happen is you're going to get some resistance. So if you're now reframing them and changing the way that they think only after you've dropped price, it's not going to hit the same. It's not going to work the same. All right, so two, okay, that leads into my next point. All right, the second most important reason why is the fact that you need to understand that when you do drop price, okay, the guard's going to go up. If you have let them earlier in the call get away with that way of thinking, they're going to think at the end of the call after you drop price, it's going to be the same thing. All right. And so what's going to happen is that when you're earlier on in the call, their guard is down. Ideally, if you have the right pain state, discovery state, their guard is down. Okay. And so it's much easier to get them aligned with the way that you want them thinking when their guard is down. Okay, when their guard is up and friction is up, right? Because when you drop price, inherently that's going to happen, right? So when you do that at the end of the call and then you come in, okay, and then you start trying to reframe them and reframe the way that they think and handle those objections, it's going to be very difficult. All right, it's going to be very difficult to do that because the guard has gone up, right? Remember, sales happen in emotion-based thinking, not logic-based thinking. When their guard goes up, that's more logic-based thinking. Therefore, the likelihood of them buying goes down. Right? So when it comes to now on the first thing I said, all right, guys, of the pre-handling objection, getting them used to the idea of changing the way that they think to the way you want them thinking. Okay, you need to get them congruent. All right, a lot of sales is congruency, get them aligned with the idea. All right, that the very reason why that they're not where they want to be is the very reason why they're on that call. Okay, you guys. So what happens is imagine this, you guys. If I go in and you bring up, a money objection, a time objection, etc., right? Because only three main objections you're going to get: money, time, and fear. Okay, those are real. Partner objection, need to think about it, yada yada. Those are all smoke screens for the three main that I just listed. Okay, so that being said, though, all right, you guys, when it comes to the pre-handling side, can you guys imagine the fact, right, is that if I go, okay, at the end of the call, I drop price, and then I expect you just to fully align with the way I want you thinking after I drop price, it's gonna be very difficult. When you've already overcome most of these objections early on in the call, you front load, you pre-handle them, if you will, earlier in the call, it's way easier at the end of the call to now handle them. All right. So that the reality is, I'm not saying that you're never going to get objections when you pre-handle them, but it makes it way easier to handle them when you've already dealt with them earlier on in the call. So let's say, for example, you go into something of like the idea of how long do you feel like it's been that you've been going through this? Okay, cool. And then before we started talking today, what do you feel like you've been doing in order to solve XYZ issue? Right? And then what you now start doing is you go deeper on that idea, right? Is what have you been doing to solve this? Oh, well, I haven't been doing much because yada, right? They say because of time. Okay, now you know time, right? So when they say something about time, what's that going to be? Something that you're going to get later on in the call. So you need to address that now. I do not leave the pain state, you guys, in the discovery state until I've pre-handled you at least once. Because like I said, I need to get them aligned and comfortable with the idea of transitioning with that they're thinking. I need to get them comfortable with me reframing them and rehandling the way that they think and getting them comfortable with the way that I want them thinking. I need to get them comfortable and used to that. Like I said 100 times already, if at the end of the call you start doing that, it's going to be way more difficult. It's way more of an uphill battle, right? Secondly, it's about establishing status, you guys, all right? What happens is when you challenge and use challenging tones, and you're able to get those points across and those points can actually hit, what that happens is they're way more susceptible to you reframing them and your way of thinking at the end of the call. While also that being said, you're establishing status. Now you're a figure of authority. People buy from people that they trust. Imagine how much trust is built when you're able to get them reframe their thinking. When your status is lowered, right, you cannot reframe them. All right, you guys, and oftentimes what happens when you get friction, when you get that friction in these sales calls, what happens is it's something that you did 10 minutes before. So if you lose your status 10 minutes before by answering questions and not asking one back and using the hot potato method or yada yada, what happens is then when you go to reframe them, there's no status there. So they're not going to really listen to you. All right. So it's so important to make sure that before we go into this, you make sure that you have this status. All right. It's so important. All right. So with that being said, though, you guys, you have to understand that the importance of the pre-handling is to get them aligned with your way of thinking, get them used to you reframing them. But also it's when you've handled them before. All right, it's way easier at the end of the call now. So when you say like, what stopped you from taking action on this sooner? Okay, that's going to be an objection, all right? And then something in the effect too of like, have you invested in more of an intimate mentorship? Okay, what stopped you from taking action on that sooner? Oh, well, I got burned by one before. Okay, great. What do you think that's going to be? An objection later on at the call. When their guard is down, it's much easier to change their way of thinking than it is way later on at the call after you've dropped price. All right, so when you get like, oh, I've been burned before, now you take them down the idea of, well, you're going to let them burn you again? Well, you've been burned once, are you going to let them burn you again? Or can you see how, then I use like the restaurant analogy. Well, you've gone out to eat before, right? And I'm sure you maybe had a bad experience, right? Well, did you let that stop you from eating again? No, right? So we're going to let that stop us from, getting into where we want to go. Or the barbershop method, the barbershop analogy. I'm sure you've gotten a haircut before. You look like a clean cut guy, right? So with that being said, I'm sure you've got like a bad haircut before, and I'm sure you've gotten like a really good haircut before. And how did the good haircut feel? That felt great. Okay, cool. So then, did we let that negative haircut experience stop us from getting another one? No, because if we did, what would happen then? We'd miss out on a good haircut. Yeah, but what's the feeling of a good haircut? We'd miss on that great feeling of feeling alive, like he's got a super sick, fresh cut, right? So can we see maybe how now on some level the fact that we let that way of thinking affect our current decision-making process, what would then that mean? Well, what happens then? And what have we missed out on by letting that way of thinking? Whatever, right? So now we've reframed them, okay, on the idea, all right, that's actually the very reason why they're on this call is because we've let that way of thinking consist. And you consequence them, and the idea now, what happens if you let this way continue? What happens if we continue on this way of thinking? Then what happens? Well, I might not get the skills. What does that mean for you, though? Right? We double down on every why, right? We don't want to say why, but we double down on everything to get them to go deeper for themselves, right? That personal feeling. All right, you guys, so long story short, to recap here a little bit, the reality is that you have to get them to understand, okay, that you have to understand that maintaining status is imperative in keeping your posture in these sales calls. When you pre-handle objections, okay, it's way easier now to handle these objections at the end of the call, right? What are objections? Objections are simply limiting beliefs and excuses. When you get limiting beliefs and excuses early on in the call, now you know at the end of the call, those are probably going to be objections and they need to be handled beforehand, all right? Because you guys have to understand that when you drop price, okay, guard goes up. When guard goes up, your points will not hit as hard because their barrier, right, their guard is up. So you need to get them aligned with your way of thinking, congruent with the way that you want them thinking, okay, and that identity of the way that you want them thinking earlier on in the call, so then it's way easier for you at the end of the call. All right, if you have not do not leave your discovery phase until you have pre-handled somebody. All right, if you do not leave that discovery phase until you've pre-handled at least some aspect of their objections, you must. All right, because it's that challenging tone. It's a great way to temperature check of where you're at with them. It's a great way to temperature check to see, okay, where are you at? Yada yada. Like, can I keep on pushing on the prospect? Is he not really receptive to me? Do I need to go deeper here? What is that may be? Because think about the status. All right, you guys think about the status that's established now. All right, with the idea of getting them aligned with the way that you want them thinking, be able to come in and challenge them. You okay if I maybe share a different perspective? Then you can even do problem and symptom. Right? With the problem or symptom method. Well, do you feel like that's the problem or the symptom? I say it vague on purpose. Well, do you feel like the fact that, all these things we're mentioning, are these the problem or the symptom? What do you mean? Well, if we had the skills, would X, Y, and Z thing be a problem? Probably not, whatever. If we had the time, would that be a problem? Well, no, how do we get the time? Well, how are we going to make more time if we don't invest in the skills to get more time, right? Well, then you've heard of the idea that nothing changes if nothing changes, right? So I guess with that being said, how can we expect to get different results if we, haven't changed our way of thinking, right? So you guys understand how when you challenge them there, it's way easier to do that at the end of the call. Do not be one of these average sales reps that only challenges prospects at the end. Really think about that. It's that's great, okay, cool. And you hear an limiting belief objection, and then now at the end of the call, it's going to be an uphill battle. You need to be making notes the whole call. When you get limiting beliefs and excuses, you need to make note that you cannot leave that discovery and pain state until you pre-handle those objections. You cannot leave them until you get that there. You cannot leave that until you get them to acknowledge that, right? Your prospects will not buy if they don't acknowledge that they are the problem. They will not buy, right? Until they place responsibility on themselves, they will not buy, all right? And so you're not reframing just to be manipulative or something. You're reframing them because if they don't start thinking in that way and with that identity, they're not going to ever get to where they need to go and they're not going to ever fix the problem because you're there to add value and fix the problem, right? So let's recap one more time, you guys. Pre-handle objections, all right? One, to get them aligned with the idea that they're going to become aligned with the way that you want them thinking, okay? Get them used to that, all right? Secondly, though, it's making it way easier for you at the end. It doesn't mean that you're guaranteed to never have objections again, but, what it does guarantee, though, okay? It does guarantee the simple fact that at the end, it's going to be way easier to overcome those objections when you've already pre-handled them and we've already touched on them, all right? And they're way more susceptible to your way of thinking. All right, you guys, the longer that your call goes on for, the more challenging you can be. If you're in the call for 5 minutes, you don't have the rapport built, the trust built to come in and pre-handle and challenge them, right? And challenge their way of thinking. You have to have that trust built. Think of it like this, you guys. If you go and challenge somebody across the table, it's not going to hit the same. If you're challenging somebody from on the same side of the table and saying, hey, I'm with you, we're on the same team, I want to see you win, but can you maybe see how this is a little bit different? It's way easier to have those points land and those things hit, right? So you guys understand that it's all psychology here. It's all psychology, and you need to. It's like hacking away at the tree, and then when you drop the price, right, and you've already gone through the pitch, it's way easier to get that final blow than it is to just than to not do any hack at the tree. Then at the very end of the call, you've got to hack away for an hour. It's too combative, right? So please, you guys, remember how important it is to pre-handle objections. All right, and challenge your prospects before. Build that trust, build that rapport, and then challenge your prospects in the way that they think. All right, you guys, with that being said, all right, if you do want to, first and foremost, I should say, I appreciate you guys getting all the way through this video, all right? If you do want help to 2 to 3x your commission, get help with all these things way more intimately, there's a link in the description to apply. All right, I've helped hundreds of other people do the same exact thing. All right, turn their sales career, their high-ticket sales career, whether they want to get placed, pre-handle objections better, close better, whatever it may be. I help all that. The link of the description of this video, the link is there. All right, you guys, you can apply to do that. It's not for everybody, but if you do feel ever so inclined, you can check it out and we'll see if it's a good fit. With that being said, you guys, all right, stay confident, stay grateful, stay persistent. It's all a mindset, all right? Be that version of you that succeeds and gets where you want to go, and I will see you guys next time.